Hello and welcome to the Move Your Business Forward podcast. These talks are hosted by Boll, founder of Evoke Management and CEO of International Leaders UK. We'll be talking with experts from both these companies about issues that affect SME companies today.
Welcome to today's episode of the Move Your Business Forward podcast. Today I'm joined by one of my colleagues at Evoke Management, Jonty White. Great to have you here today, Jonty. Thanks for joining. So Jonty, background being a serial entrepreneur, working in a range of businesses and currently one of the portfolio directors at Evoke. And I thought one of the things that'd be interesting to talk about is one of the stories and the journeys you've been on in your business career. So I'm going to talk specifically about Burts Snacks, which you took over in 2000. It was a fairly early stage business, turning over around 300k. And you took it over and scaled it over 13 years or so to 50 million turnover before you exited. And firstly, that's an amazing achievement. So well done and congrats for that. It'd be great just to find out a bit more about the story of how you got involved and that journey of going through the scale, the milestones involved with scale and what were your learnings. So yeah, how did the opportunity come up in the first place, Jonty?
It was just one of those moments where myself and a friend really saw it come up for sale locally. I live in Devon, and I was in my sort of early to mid 30s and looking down the barrel of a property career, which I wasn't massively excited about. And this opportunity with this tiny factory-based business making crisps came up for sale. And it was a 2,000 square foot building, which was the factory, the warehouse, the offices, everything. And we thought, why not? So we bought it. And I can honestly say that when we bought it, I thought that potatoes went in one end and crisps came out the other end, and it was fully automated and dead easy. Well, potatoes do go in one end and crisps do come out the other end, but what happens in the middle is an absolute nightmare. So it was very, very steep learning. Incredibly steep learning. I'd never made anything before. But it was immense amounts of fun. So and then we just grew.
And in terms of the biggest learning there, obviously there's getting your head around a processing operation, and then the way you've got to take this business to the next level. And I'm assuming there's all kinds of typical challenges like cash flow and funding as well. So talk to me a little about those components.
Yeah. So the two most difficult bits of that business, complete standouts. Everything else was easily solvable, really. But the two most difficult bits was manufacturing, which is as close to impossible as you can get in life, to actually make manufacturing work. So that was very difficult. And then we grew incredibly fast, relentlessly. So cash was just a never-ending sleepless nights. I can tell you stories about what we had to do that would turn most accountants grey overnight. But that's what we had to do, and that's what we did. Survived, and there we go.
And in terms of the things there, so manufacturing, and I know you work with a number of SME manufacturing companies at the moment.
Yeah.
What, obviously you mentioned it being challenging. I mean, what did you learn to make it less challenging, if that makes sense? So what are the things that you would advise other people to do now based on your learnings?
Yeah, so with Burts, I guess we sort of winged it, and the people we bought it from really were winging it. They didn't really have systems in place that gave them a clear vision of actually what was going on in the business. However boring it may seem, but systems are really important. And If it's not measurable, then you shouldn't really be doing it, or you find another way of doing it. I know it's a boring old cliche, but it is incredibly true for manufacturing particularly. So, I mean, right from top to bottom of that business, eventually, we were totally driven by KPIs. So at any one point, you sort of knew where you were, and the KPIs were really useful for helping us see if there was potentially a problem somewhere, and we could get into that problem really quickly, as opposed to finding out about the problem 3 days later and then having a much bigger problem to try and fix.
And that process of identifying the right KPIs, because I think that's always a challenge with whatever business.
Yeah.
What was your learnings from that in terms of identifying and then picking the right ones to really focus on as the business grow? I'm assuming you're getting less and less removed from the details, so you need that high level dashboard of KPIs to keep track of things.
Yeah, I mean, I personally, it was just the way I worked. I like to keep as involved as I possibly could whenever I could. So I was deeply involved in production to the end, really. But I mean, there are certain KPIs that are obvious. Manufacturing, you've got to have productivity, you've got to have efficiency, etc. But there are other KPIs that you just learn because it's your business. And we adopted a lot of lean manufacturing principles, which really helped. But yeah, I mean, you've got to sit down and work it out and use the people in the company who are working for you to help you do it. And it's a daft man who thinks he understands how a bagging machine works better than the bloke who actually runs the bagging machine.
Yeah, and I guess it's just getting those people engaged with the fact this is a process to put in place systems, reporting that's going to make everyone's life easier and make sure the whole business keeps going. Because
yeah, and I've been to plenty of factories where the staff on the production line don't feel like they're worthy, and they don't feel that their bosses understand what they have to go through, etc. And they feel badly treated, and you're never going to get great efficiency out of those people and great enthusiasm.
Yeah.
So people, yeah, are very important.
Cool, great. Well, that sounds great. So moving on to the cash survival is often interesting, but clearly you had fast growth, so that's fantastic. And I think most companies would dream of the growth that you had. What was the big driver of that, and the big learnings from how to be successful with growth?
Well, we managed to grow the business quickly because we were quite good at marketing, getting our name out there. We were quite good at selling, and we had, and they still have, an incredibly good product. And we were very innovative. We came up with great new ideas, some of which were not really designed to be eaten. They were just silly flavors that got us written about and talked about. But we were just good at marketing and PR and that sort of thing. And actually, that side of it, I think we found relatively easy. It was the financing of that growth that was really difficult, because we were a consumer brand, but we were selling exclusively really through supermarkets and retail. As I'm sure you know, that they are not the kindest of payers in the world.
No. Well, before we move on to the finance piece, I mean, I think a lot of companies struggle with the marketing because, something I've heard and repeat is 80% of marketing doesn't work. So it's trying to get your head around that and find the 20%. And often people that are non-marketing backgrounds just get frustrated with it and find it's money being poured into various strategies that don't often give a return. So you obviously found it easy, as you described, and sounds like you probably found it quite enjoyable as well. So what would you encourage anyone to do to make their marketing easy and enjoyable as well? Because I think that's the important connection to have, isn't it?
Well, there was quite a lot of passion in our business for our brand. But I think, we didn't have social media and all those sort of things. I wish we had. It would have been a complete game changer, I think, for that particular business, because it was so brand centric. But I think I think we understood really well what our product was, and who our consumer was. And I think once you understand those two bits, you can start talking to them and communicating with them. We never advertised, never felt that would have been worthwhile. If we were selling golf clubs, it would have been fine. So we'd have just advertised in a golf club magazine. But with food, it's pretty difficult, because where do you put the adverts? And you need to try and get hold of that person at a moment when they might want to buy it. It's a sort of impulse purchase. Now, I don't think anyone goes to the supermarket to buy a packet of crisps. So we spent a lot of time and effort working out ways of talking to consumers as best we could. As I say, we did not have TikTok and Instagram. Facebook was beginning to come into itself, but even that was pretty tiny. So it was just ways of communicating as best we can. So we used a lot of PR. We got ourselves written about as often as we could. We were pretty irreverent, and so that helped. And we were playing in a marketplace dominated really by one big player, and so the press sort of quite liked to back the underdog, and I guess that helped. But I think the key thing was really completely understanding our product and who our consumer was, and then we could talk to them and not try and scattergun to every single person in the world. We were very specific about who we thought would buy our crisps, and it was often people that would not normally buy crisps.
Okay, no, interesting.
Yeah.
And were you using any PR companies to help, or
Yes.
were you developing your own relationships? Yeah.
No, I mean, we did have some of our own relationships, but I don't think there was a time. So when we bought the business, there was no PR. And in fact, when we bought the business, even though it was only 300,000, that's as far as that owner wanted to go. So he was profitable, and he was getting enough money out of it. And so he shut the doors to any new business.
Right.
We obviously opened it up, and almost straight away employed a PR company, and worked with PRs the whole way through. And all of them were very good, actually.
Yeah, excellent. So the money piece, obviously,
Yeah.
a lot of companies can have fantastic revenue and everything, but cash is often the thing that will kill a business. So yeah, what was your story around survival with fast growth and needing cash?
Well, I mean, it was survival at times. I mean, I had to go home to my wife a couple of evenings and say, if I can't raise £500,000 tomorrow, we don't have a house. It was as blunt as that. And
how I mean, that's a really tough thing to. And having the conversation is one thing, but lead up to that is pretty tough. I mean, what was how? Yeah.
Well, the thing is, when you're growing very fast, these things come up on you really quickly, and particularly sort of earlier days, it was just you didn't necessarily have all the reporting you probably should have had to tell you what was around the corner. And we probably weren't stress testing our assumptions as much as we should have done, and that sort of thing. But the long and short of it is we were forever running out of money. We never had a surplus of cash, ever. And we ended up having to do quite a lot of financing. Obviously, we raised equity as well. We did everything we can, but this was all within our design. We had decided to grow our business quickly with the intention of selling it at a certain point, and not all of it worked out perfectly, because 2008 came along, and that killed a lot of deals, as you know. And in fact, we had a deal with a very large soft drinks company that also owns a very large crisp company, American company, not Coca-Cola, but similar. And they pulled out at the last minute because of 2008. Which was fine. We just carried on. But at the time, it was fairly devastating. But we had always decided that it was a growth strategy because it was a land grab, really. We wanted to be as big as we could and have as much presence on the shelves. And that's where we thought people would see the value in us.
I mean, that's not necessarily the same strategy that everyone goes with in the consumable space. So, but it's also, you must be focused then on, right, we've got to get to this growth and then we're ready to sell. Did you have that number in mind, or how vague was that kind of target?
We did, but that sort of went out of the window, particularly around the 2008 moment. And just before 2008, in sort of 2006, 2007, EBITDA multiples were they were cuckoo, some of them. There were 14, 15 times EBITDA being achieved for brands like ours. And that was really exciting. And in truth, we probably just held on a little bit too long. And then the EBITDAs went down quite dramatically. But I mean, so we did have a target that we were aiming for, but it sort of changed because of what was going on, and not dissimilar to what's happening at the moment.
One thing that often comes up with entrepreneurs is that this balance of, we're going to grow the business, or we want to get the business to a certain point, and then we're going to exit. And often all the team that you have around you that's working on the business isn't going to get the benefit of that, or depending on how it's structured. How did you communicate the business plans with the team? Some of the team, I'm assuming, would be carrying on with the business after you would have moved on.
Yes, and so very senior people would have options or whatever, it was a slightly different story with Burts because we ended up selling it to an existing investor.
Right.
So really, the original shareholders went, but the business just carried on as it was. There was no big change. It wasn't like we left the office one day and a new set of people came in. It was all the same people. So it was just two guys at the top, if you like, who were replaced, but we'd been beginning to be replaced anyway. So we had a succession plan in place, and actually for companies I'm talking to now who have contacted us because they want to get themselves ready to sell in 2-3 years' time. Succession is something that I think can possibly get overlooked, but it's incredibly important. Because whoever comes into the business that is being sold doesn't necessarily want to just come in and run it themselves. They want a decent team in there, so they know it's not all going to fall off a cliff the moment Joe Bloggs leaves. Plus, if you don't have good succession in place, the existing owners are going to have to stay on for some period of time to do a handover, and it could be a year, it could be 2 years. If you want a clean break, you need to have a great team behind you.
No, the sound advice. I mean, one thing. Well, I'd like to round off with a couple of thoughts. So your kind of top 3 tips for anyone that might be running a similar business or same ambition. But one thing I do want to come back to is that kind of really hard reality of facing loss of the house or like this, we're going to lose everything. I mean, clearly no one really wants to be in that position, but occasionally, as you say, these things crop up quicker than expected or completely unexpectedly. What was it like for you when you kind of were approaching that moment? What were you thinking?
Well, it wasn't really about me. It was much more about my wife and our 2 small children than about me. I mean, I was relatively young and fairly gung-ho about things, and we trod a very fine line, and on purpose. And I certainly wouldn't necessarily recommend that to everybody, and if you do it, go in with your eyes wide open. It was just how we wanted to do it. And subsequent businesses I have not run like that, because it's a fairly scary ride. But it was a very difficult few months when that particular instance happened, particularly though for my wife, Annabelle, who was, doing the really hard work of looking after children and having to sit at home worrying about, what it would be like to bring up 2 children in a tent. But
luckily, it never came to that. But
it never came to that. Yeah,
I'm sure you can relate to other business owners that might be on the edge of going and concerned. So just to round this off, and I get the important thing here, I guess, is, and you've said you wouldn't necessarily done the same things again, and other businesses you've run, you wouldn't do necessarily the same things. But if you were going to talk to anyone, what would be your top 3 kind of tips from your learnings that you would apply to any business in this kind of consumable manufacturing space?
Well, I mean, it's going to depend on what position they're in and how they're actually running their business. But planning and strategizing, and not getting those 2 things muddled up, because they're different. So that could even be 2, but having a good plan and a great strategy for getting to where you want to get to, and knowing where you want to get to, I guess, and then using systems to allow you to understand where you are at any one moment. And it doesn't have to be in the most finite detail, but your systems, your KPIs, whatever they are, have to be done in such a way that they can show you there is something somewhere going wrong and it's time to have a deeper look. So you know what's going on, and you're not sitting in your ivory tower hoping it's all going to be okay. And the other one is cash. I think anyone would tell you that it's having a good handle on cash, not being underinvested, that sort of thing.
And I think the main thing with that cash is just be prepared for different scenarios and model them out, and don't be afraid to communicate these things with your stakeholders, your investors, the bank, whatever it is, because people leave it too late. And I think just having the scenarios and testing those scenarios and making sure there's plans in place for those, I think, is really important. And that these things coming up so unexpectedly. Look, Jonty, it's been really interesting to talk about this, and I'm sure there's a lot more we can talk about, but hopefully some interesting points there for people listening to this. And I guess the most important thing, Jonty, is you're working with a number of similar businesses that are on that growth journey. Your advice and support and picking up from your learnings, and hopefully helping people avoid some of these conversations they might have to have with their other halves where it's all unexpectedly gone wrong. So I think that's hugely valuable, and hopefully some people listening to this will want to have a chat with you and see how you can add some value there. So thank you, Jonty. Really appreciate your time for that, and we'll speak again soon.
Thanks for listening. If you'd like more information about the topics discussed in this podcast, then you can find us on our website at moveyourbusinessforward.com.